What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open again, 800-313-9443. And we're going to take a phone call from Frank in North Carolina. Frank, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I kind of take issue with something that it's kind of a recurring theme with you, where it's all about, and I understand partly where you're coming from. I understand the Vietnam veterans coming home got spat on and everything, and, you know, I don't agree with that. I'm a Marine Corps veteran myself, but at some point with the advent, not just the existence, but the advent of the Internet and alternative information, it's everywhere. Everybody knows somebody who said, hey, have you ever taken a look at 9/11? It's up to them whether they do or not, but at some point we have to hold these people accountable, especially these career military people and officers, college-educated military officers. At some point, I mean, if nobody came to a war, nobody would go fight the war. We couldn't have a war, right? Well, I mean, I guess you got Blackwater and you got these, but I still don't think it would go on to the extent. I mean, at some point, I don't respect veterans, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I have compassion for, like, these 18, 19-year-old kids that don't know anything. They're ignorant. They come from an ignorant background or something. But, I mean, people that went to good schools and everything, and they, you know, I see these interviews with people, even women, they're like, well, I have to fight. I want to go kill people, and they become pilots dropping bombs on people that have never done anything to them. I think at some point, and I think we're way past that point, in my opinion, we have to hold these people accountable.
I actually do agree with you. When I talk about respecting our veterans, I'm usually talking about the ground pounders, you know, the people who are conscripts or they joined the military because they didn't have any other option. You're right. Once you get into the officer corps, you're dealing with people who know what the real agendas are and the real purposes are and the war crimes, and we do have to have a demarcation point. When I talk about having a debt of obligation to all those wounded veterans coming on back, is recognition of the fact that they were lied to about the real purposes of the war as much as the rest of we were. But for those military officers who knew it was a lie, obviously they deserve nothing but our scorn and disrespect.
And we know it's a lie now. That's what the government does. I mean, these people are criminals. The people they work. Our military, I mean, it's like it goes back to War as a Racket by General Smedley Butler, two-time recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Absolutely.
Big shot, you know, Marine Corps. He said all war, it's all a racket. And we have to hold these people accountable at some point, the ones who know or should know, who have had every available opportunity to find out, but they chose to look the other way. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, you're welcome, and, you know, congratulations on getting through your service as a Marine and coming back to us. But as a Marine, you probably remember during basic training, there's a lot of brainwashing that's going on as well, along with the physical training. They're trying to create fanatic true believers, and I've had a few discussions with people like that here on the island of Oahu. And there's also the reality that when you're living on military bases, there's a lot of filtering of the Internet that's already going on. They're very, very careful about what's allowed to get in there and what isn't. And so unless these people who are living on base housing, they go on out someplace else and get onto a computer, and that's going to be an uncommon occurrence. So, yeah, they're shielded from things that might get in the way of the war agenda. Anyway, Frank, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch to Brandon in San Francisco. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I called in about silver as an alternative currency, but may I make a comment on the military and the application of the force?
Okay.
I used to think long and hard about how we allowed Guantanamo and abuse of detainees and such and war crimes. And I've come to the idea that maybe they do it intentionally. They make these soldiers do these atrocious acts so that it destroys their soul. And once they return to society, they are not fully functioning individuals once they've served their usefulness, also like pumping them full of experimental drugs. I just wanted to throw that out there, but I did call about silver.
Before we go to silver, I want to respond to what you said. There is absolutely no question that a lot of soldiers who serve in these various campaigns do come back traumatized by what they've been forced to do, and they have difficulty reassimilating into our society. A lot of PTSD out there. Now, as far as the actual commission of the torture, first of all, we the people did not allow it to happen. We the people didn't even know it was going on until there were some whistleblowers who came on out and said, look what's going on. But in the case of torture centers like Abu Ghraib, the people actually doing the torture are not your rank-and-file soldiers and airmen and so forth. They are hired contractors working for the CIA. And so these are people who are just, this is what they do, and they're used to it, and apparently they're able to live comfortably with it. We're going to do a quick shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Pardon me. As far as intentionally wanting to send back dysfunctional veterans to our society, I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just something they don't really care about. Once these young people have done what they were told to do, they're simply discarded as no longer being useful to the war agenda. I remember back during the Second Iraq War where Donald Rumsfeld was out there just wringing his hands that too many of these U.S. soldiers in Iraq were surviving their injuries, and it was just this incredible burden on the war budget. The spreadsheet hadn't allowed for this many people to actually survive their battlefield injuries. And that is exactly how they think about the people in uniform. They're just assets. They're just livestock. They're soldiers. They go on out there, and they're predicting a certain number will be killed, a certain number will be wounded. And as we've seen from VA scandal after VA scandal after VA scandal, once these kids come on back, they're all but abandoned to whatever their fate is going to be, because the focus of the government is to grab the new young kids and put them into uniform and get them over to the battlefield as soon as they can.
Yeah, and they're considered, the government considers them the number one threat to their monopolies or whatnot. So on silver, I was thinking Max Kaiser. Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
Max Kaiser was saying if you wanted to kill the Chase Bank, metaphorically, you'd buy silver and destroy Jamie Dimon. And going with that thread, if we just started doing our own commerce in silver amongst ourselves, do you think at some point maybe it could catch on and we could just get out from underneath the central bank and start using old silver coins and silver objects that have value?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the advantages of what's called the junk silver coins, the pre-64 coins that actually had metal in them, everybody recognizes their value. It's a known unit of worth, and yeah, people could carry on commerce doing that on a cash-only basis. Unfortunately, if it ever really started to take off, I can guarantee you that the U.S. government would immediately pass laws outlawing it. We're already seeing in some states like Arizona where they have removed the capital gains tax from the buying and selling of gold and silver coins, turning them into an alternative currency. But a lot of people are going to be looking at alternative currencies because the currency coming out of the Federal Reserve, it's a debt trap. People realize it's a debt trap. And around the world, they're saying it's just not considered reliable or dependable any longer. And as things start to really come apart in this country, you'll see local communities have their own indigenous currencies. It happened during the Depression of the 1930s. It happened during the Civil War, and it will happen again.
Right. Like you hear the term the deep state now, it's a zeitgeist, and it's on the tip of people's tongues. Maybe at some point alternative currency and the Fed will be the zeitgeist and on the tip of the tongue. I think if enough people get involved, there's no way the government would try to squash it.
Oh, yes, they will.
Momentum.
Yes, they will. Remember how Roosevelt banned gold coin and bar ownership?
Right, but I understand a lot of people didn't participate. They actually kept their gold, and so be it. I think only one person was prosecuted under that. I don't know. I probably heard that from you. But anyway, that was just my thought, using silver coins to kind of stick it to the Fed. And Max Kaiser definitely was a proponent of that. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. You know, if you look at the face of a Federal Reserve note, it says this note is legal tender for all debts public and private. It doesn't say it's the only one. If you and somebody else want to do business with each other, whatever currency you want to use, that's the currency you're using. It's that simple. And anything with inherent value to it, silver coins, gold coins, copper. There have been some cultures where specific seashells were the unit of currency because it was based on a commodity, the seashell. And it was in limited supply, so they couldn't play around with that. Alrighty, now then, up in Sweden, they like to portray themselves as this incredible liberal paradise. There are bicycle paths everywhere and carless zones. And when Grand Tour was up there, Jeremy Clarkson couldn't resist poking fun at their feminist government. So it is very, very surprising, with Sweden being as far down the liberal agenda as they are, that all of a sudden they have now banned mandatory vaccinations, citing serious health concerns. And apparently Sweden's constitution is interpreted as granting a right to the citizen to choose their own health care. Probably the only reason our Bill of Rights didn't have that in there is back then it was taken for granted. You got to choose what your health care was going to be. It wasn't even considered possible that there would be an abusive government saying you will take this medicine, you will not take that medicine. But Sweden has now banned mandatory vaccinations. If you want to get them, you can get them. You do not have to. So far this year, the U.S. government has already paid out $159 million in damages to vaccine-injured children, and still the corporate media is out there saying vaccines are perfectly safe. Get all those 38, 39, however many that there are required now. Apparently they were showing Vaxxed in a theater down in New Zealand, and this doctor got up literally in front of the screen, waving his arms, saying, "Every one of you watching this, you're killing babies. You've got to stop doing this here." Apparently over in Great Britain, there is another contaminated blood scandal. And, of course, what makes it a scandal is not the contaminated blood, but the cover-up. And apparently the British government had uncovered evidence that AIDS was in blood products all the way back to 1984, which, by the way, times out to a similar tainted blood scandal that was going on in Arkansas under then Governor Bill Clinton. But apparently the notifications did not go out rapidly, and as a result, a lot of people in Great Britain who use those blood products now have AIDS, and some are starting to die. Now, getting on back to marijuana, the American Legion, let's see. Okay. The American Legion is calling on Donald Trump to take marijuana off schedule to help veterans, because apparently it does help in treating post-traumatic stress disorder. And I think maybe it is time for them to consider that as at least one little kindness they can do to these suffering veterans. And this stands in contrast with this very tragic story where apparently a Marine veteran is facing potentially life in prison over 1 ounce of marijuana he was using to treat his post-traumatic stress disorder. And it is a classic story. A gentleman named Landowski. The prescription medications being given to him by the VA for his PTSD were not working. They made him feel terrible. We know how dangerous those prescription psychiatric medications can be. And so he started growing a little bit of marijuana for his own personal use. And unfortunately, even with the marijuana, he had a PTSD episode. His wife called the police to come help calm him down, and instead they arrested him. Another story, this one out of the Daily Mail in Great Britain. There's a new study showing that marijuana can actually make it easier for cocaine addicts to quit. That's another positive use for marijuana. Rather than be the rumored gateway drug, it could actually be the escape hatch drug. Now, Last week you probably heard of this story where British Airways had to cancel a whole bunch of flights because of a massive computer system failure. 300,000 passengers because their computer system, their global computer system broke down. Turns out the story gets even better than that because apparently British Airways had outsourced their IT management to a company in India, and the technicians in India didn't know how to boot the backup system that would have got everything up and running in the space of a couple of minutes. Oopsie. Little bit of an oopsie. Now, as you know, there's a big debate over the banning of laptops to certain on flights from certain Muslim countries, and everybody's screaming racism, so forth and so on. Well, they're going to end that one now because apparently the United States is talking about extending the laptop ban to all international flights. And this is a bad idea. First of all, I'm convinced that you can make any kind of a significant bomb inside a laptop. Second, it exposes those laptops to theft by the baggage crews, which is a reality of life. It's like another classic case. We're going to do a booga-booga, tell you something scary, pass a bunch of laws, make you think we're taking care of you, and it just winds up being a huge headache for everybody. As you know, sharing of data has become a major issue with privacy advocates. And there's an article that came out over an activist post. Apparently, over at the University of California, they've done a study showing that 7 out of every 10 smartphone applications will share your data with third-party services, mostly advertisers. But there is no opt-out. We're going to take a phone call now. Rick in Arizona, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I listened to a podcast a while ago, and the guest was a guy named Barry Lanza, who circulated high in the oil industry over the years. And he said that the national health care system in England is paid for by Royal Dutch Shell's profits from their Iran operations. Now, he said that, for example, the other oil companies are WASP oil companies, like the British Petroleum,
yeah,
and a couple other names. He said, but the deal was for Royal Dutch Shell, which was a Rothschild company, to get into Iran, they had to pay, the profits had to pay for the national health care system. And, I can't prove that, but that's what he said. And I was wondering if you ever heard anything like that.
No, I hadn't. I'll certainly take a look into it. But it would really make sense that if you're going to try and have a national health care system, finding a way to fund it, from a major source of revenue would be a good way to do it. Here in the United States of America, of course, we're paying all these high taxes, high fees, high interest to the banks, and we're still expected to pay for our own health care and education. And that's why we're struggling so hard.
Wouldn't all the people that profit from the banks and the oil companies fit into a small auditorium?
Yeah, they would. Have you ever seen the little animation, the tiny dot?
No.
All right, I'm going to put it up on my webpage over this next commercial break. But yeah, the wealth inequality has reached a point where the ultra-rich billionaires, it's a very, very small group of people sitting on top of a global population in the billions of people who are just barely surviving. And that really is not a sustainable model for any kind of government. Sooner or later, there's going to be violent uprisings. Eat the rich will no longer just be a joke on a T-shirt.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. And when we come on back here from this next commercial break, more about computers. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And as I was saying at the very top of the program, the reason we did not have a live broadcast yesterday as planned was because the Spectrum cable TV internet went down 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, came back briefly just before showtime yesterday, then went down yet again. And it underscores the fact that our infrastructure in all levels is continuing to deteriorate. And we're right now getting literally just 10% of the bandwidth that we actually pay for. And we're almost afraid to, like, say we want the less expensive plan out of fear that we'll get even less. But there's an article over here came out of The Verge basically saying that major internet ISPs are being accused of deliberately throttling traffic. And over at Spectrum, somebody actually found one of the internal documents saying that in order to manage network load, that they engage in speed enforcement. And then they say, well, we're not throttling. We don't call it that. We call it something else. We're calling it speed enforcement, therefore it's not throttling, and it's your classic weasel wording. But apparently the issue is that these companies are not making investments to keep their networks up to par, to carry the capacity that they're selling. They're selling more and more internet services, but they're not increasing the net to carry the additional load, and that's why we're getting into this throttling. If you go over to downdetector.com and look at Spectrum, nonstop complaints all over the country. And apparently Level 3, which is one of the top tiers of internet connectivity, is making the accusations that these major internet service providers are abusing their market share to interfere with the flow of internet for end users. And apparently, according to Level 3, these ISPs are basically attempting to get Level 3 to pay them a fee for additional traffic caused by services like Netflix. So they're already out there inadequate and still trying to find a way to maximize the profit from it. And what's really amazing, it was only about 10 years ago everybody was complaining about how much dark fiber was out there. Because when all the internet was really starting to boom up, everybody was laying cables and there wasn't enough traffic for the cables. Now they're saturated. And nobody's got the money to actually go on out there and find ways to improve the bandwidth and actually deliver the service people are paying for in this country. Over in places like Japan, it's gigabit into the home at the consumer level. And they don't seem to have any problem sustaining that. Now apparently, getting on back to liberal Sweden, they have now placed kill switches on their corporate media channels to block any kind of reading, saving, or translating pages about the Muslim refugees. If you try and go on any social media, corporate media, talking about the refugees, boom, you're cut off. All right, let's take a phone call. Ramsey in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello. I have a question. Cesar, why is the opposition is so much against Trump? I just don't understand. Like Cesar, Donald Trump attacked Syria, he attacked Afghanistan, he made the deal with Saudi Arabia, which of course is going to benefit ISIS and so on. So why are these people still against Trump? Like everything Trump did, like these people should be happy with Trump.
Well, you need to understand there are different agendas at work here. And yes, Trump has caved into the war agenda, but behind that you still have the Bush-Clinton cartel want to regain a lock on the White House. Their plan ever since the 1980s was to hand that White House off back and forth, Clinton-Bush, Bush-Clinton, in order to keep the lid on all that CIA drug running and corruption. And the Clintons and the Bushes do not trust Trump not to look where the evidence starts to lead as these cases unravel. That's why they're having a panic over the Seth Rich case. So you're dealing with different factions and different agendas. It's not Trump and the opposition. It's Trump and the War Party, Trump and the CIA, Trump and the Clintons. There are a lot of different players. Thank you for the phone call, Ramsey. Got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking about Internet service, and I'm already getting a bunch of emails from people who are also on Spectrum just saying, yeah, it was out where they were yesterday or over the weekend, and the service is really, really terrible. And life under fascism, what can I tell you? Internet is not the only one. The cable TV industry is in serious, serious trouble. They're losing subscribers. Now, the only reason we still subscribe to cable TV is it's bundled with our internet service. But more and more people are switching over to streaming services where they decide where they, when and where they want to watch what they want to watch, which is very, very convenient. And certainly looking at the cable offerings we get here, Claire and I, we go around that dial. We've got all these channels, and they're always showing the same thing over and over and over and over again. There's hardly anything new out there. It's a rarity to see something new. So that's another reason. People want to look at what's new. They don't want to see endless reruns, pay for endless reruns. All right, let's take a few more phone calls here. Alex in San Antonio, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I was calling because I wanted to ask you a question regarding the laptops on the computer, on the airplanes coming to the U.S. I was wondering, could it possibly be that you could have somebody hack into the avionics? And
no. The in-cabin entertainment network is isolated from the cockpit controls. There's no connection. A lot of people have wondered about that, but for the very obvious reason, the cabin entertainment network is isolated.
But you wouldn't have to do it through you could do it. There's several different ways to be able to interact with the computer on board. It's just
how would you do it? It doesn't have Wi-Fi. It doesn't have Bluetooth. It's not connected.
Well, there is Wi-Fi on there's Wi-Fi on some flights, especially international.
Yeah, in the cabin. In the cabin, but the flight control system in the cockpit doesn't use Wi-Fi. Again, for the very obvious reason.
I'm just saying, could it be possible that because there are always caveats and things we don't know,
well,
which is why I'm wondering.
No, I don't think so.
Go ahead.
I don't think so. In fact, even this idea of having to turn off your electronic devices during takeoff and landing appears to be overblown. Mythbusters actually did one of their episodes on this where they had an aircraft with a modern cockpit, and they were back there in the cabin with all kinds of cell phones and laptops and everything, and they were turning them on and turning them off. They could not get any indications of any interference with the cockpit flight system.
Fair enough. That's understandable. It's just that you always tell us that there's always things that we don't know, and there's always, for security reasons, there's always end arounds and whatnot. And
well, in our products, in the consumer products and everything, but airline cockpits are something else, completely different. They're totally air gapped. Most of those boxes basically amount to Faraday shields as well. So they're shielded.
Well, no, you would hope so. You would hope so,
okay.
But there are ways that, because especially how you always mention it sometimes.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Anyway, Alex, thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Charles in Texas. Charles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. This is Charles from Texas, and I'm the one that sent you the email a little while ago about. He's a buddy of mine. He's a full-blown Democrat. He's always putting your name out there. Okay. And it's just funny that he keeps putting your name out there, with Alex Jones, and then with the funny thing when I told when I emailed you earlier, but the funny thing was about the whole thing about the chemtrails deals, and I know where you stand on chemtrails, and I did my research on that too, and it all goes back to what you say. It's just the what was it, how the plane flies through the air and how it leaves the trail.
I got to tell you, I enjoyed the graphic. I especially enjoyed your observation that the baby didn't have a face mask, and I loved the caption, "Forget about war, poverty, and corruption. We're fighting clouds." And I thought that was great. But, there are a lot of people out there who are trying to find any way to denigrate anybody in the independent media, whether it's Alex Jones or myself, or John Studmiller. And the best thing to do is just ignore them. It's just a waste of time to try and get sucked into that debate.
Yeah, and then I told him, I said, if you have such an issue with him, I said, won't you just challenge him yourself? I said, he's on the radio. He's on from 3 to 3 to 5 over here, local time. And I told him, I said, go ahead. I said, I dare you challenge him. I said, if you can find me where he says chemtrails, because I will vote Democrat the next, election. and I'm still waiting on him to run his response.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
well,
and then I wanted to come back. Yeah, go ahead.
Now, I was going to say, I mean, you can tell how scared everybody is about the Seth Rich case because, once again, my mailbox is being flooded with no plane at the Pentagon and the UFOs, hollow Earth, fake Apollo moon landings, and just they're just dumping all of that junk as hard as they can all over the independent media, trying to make us look bad, trying to somehow find a way to wreck our credibility in the false hope that the American people will immediately flock back to the corporate media to get their daily dose of reality.
And that's one thing I wanted to point out. I mean, I got, plenty of friends, that, some of us are awake, in the sense of what's going on, but some people follow the rabbit hole too deep into those sections of the independent media where, I try to tell them, stick to the status quo. What is the main thing? It goes, if you look at all those videos that you're looking at, what's the main thing that's always there? The banks.
Yep.
The Federal Reserve. I said, that's the main thing. And then they go from there, and then they go on to the whole, UFO, the reptilians, and all that other stuff. I said, no. I said, that's just something to keep your mind occupied away from what really is going on. I said, look at what's going on. I told them, read the Constitution. That tells you a lot. I said, then go and look at the banks. I said, the money junkies. I use that word a lot, the money junkies, which, yes. What I grabbed from you a little bit. And I told them, I said, look at the money junkies. Look at that. Look how our state is, I'm talking about, look how many jobs are not there. Look at all this other stuff that's going on around us. And you tend to look away from that. That's the status quo that we need to be looking at.
Well, yeah, that's basically, people can find a great deal of fun and enjoyment in trying to figure out things, and they can get lured off into rather ridiculous areas, and some of that is intentional as part of the campaign to discredit the independent media. But you need to always remember Occam's razor from William of Ockham. The simplest explanation is generally going to be the correct one. And, just stay focused on the things that you really know, and don't get lured off with all this talk about, unreachably far conspiracies like the Bilderbergers or the rest of it. As you say yourself, the cause of our misery is right on the Main Street, USA, and that's those Federal Reserve banks. By the way, originally I called them money addicts. I got the phrase money junkies from Buffy St. Marie, who came out here to do a charity concert for one of our local public radio stations, KKCR, where I used to do a lot of interviews with Michael Vanderveer, who is sadly no longer with us. But she came on out, and she was using the term money junkies, and I said, that's it, that captures it. Money addicts is a behavior. Money junkies captures the personality, and that's where I got that from. I'm not going to claim originating it.
Oh, okay.
That's where I got it, and I'm going to go on using it.
Yes, and I wanted to come back to what you were talking about earlier about the internet and and how slow the stuff is. How slow down it is becoming. In my area too. I mean, it's like that. Even when I listen to to RBN, it's like it's always lagging. It's always lagging. And I have I'm supposed to. I mean, for the amount of money that I pay for for the like you said, the bundle that I get because it includes the internet. I mean, it's slow. I mean, and when I was supposed to be paying, I don't know, I think like 100-something BPs per minute or whatever. I don't know. I don't really know too much about it.
They sell them at bits per second. 300 megabits per second is currently the top available to consumers, and that's basically it. And it's a good stream for most applications. But when you do an internet speed test to the mainland, and you're only getting 30 megabits per second on a 300 megabits per second line, you know you're being cheated. And whether that is intentionally trying to slow the net down for those of us on the independent media, that may be one explanation. I tend to think it is these companies, as they spend huge amounts of money gobbling up competitors and building these monopolies, they are not investing the money in the actual increasing of their systems to carry the additional traffic that they're acquiring. and that really is a major problem.
Yeah, and I know I've complained about it to them, and they told me, oh, we can sell you this device, that'll help you speed it up, and get better, reach, blah blah blah. I'm like, well, then why would I want to do that if I'm already paying top dollar for what I'm supposed to be getting?
Yeah, that's a discussion I had with the Spectrum people when I said I'm only getting 30 megabits per second. And they said, well, you need one of our new packages. And I said, I already have the package. Check on your computer. I'm supposed to be getting 300 megabits per second. At which point I got the lecture, oh, reboot your router, reboot your cable modem. We can send out a technician in 3 years to check out the lines and blah, 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 blah. And, that's the way they're basically the agenda of the customer support is make the customer think it's their fault and they will go away, which doesn't work for those of us who actually know anything about Internet communication. Anyway, we're going to let you go here. We're running out of time here.
All right, have a good one.
Thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mark?
Hey, Mike. Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been covering the Seth Rich case. I'm going on YouTube and a lot. I noticed something. Not only is the mainstream media or a fake stream media not covering it, but certain parts of what call themselves alternate media. And one of them is Breitbart. The thing is, you got a guy by the name of, you probably know who I'm talking about, Lee Stranahan.
Yeah.
And he is going methodically into this. Breitbart fired him. They fired him because that was before he started even covering Seth Rich because of the CrowdStrike. He wanted to cover CrowdStrike, which they refused. Breitbart now, without Steve Bannon, is becoming a very fake news themselves.
Yes.
Yes. They've got these two guys, Alex Marlowe and Matt Boyle, basically run it. And they're running people like Stranahan, who's probably one of the best reporters in this country. Even, what's his name, Bannon said that. And they're running it into the ground, and yet they keep on calling themselves alternate media. I don't even listen to them very much anymore. Once in a while, I'm up at that time, if I'm on the road, there's nothing else. Yeah, and I'm serious. I'll listen to them. But I have to listen to them now just to see whether they covered that Rich case. It's almost like it doesn't exist.
Well, there's something there's something you need to keep in mind with the independent media. If they seem to have a lot of corporate funding to be able to afford being up on Sirius and the rest of it, you have to know that some strings have been attached to that money. And what we're seeing here is an effort by the corporate media to buy up as much of the independent media as they can. And, of course, that's being kept very, very hidden. But we have seen more than a few times where an independent media outlet that is really doing a good job, all of a sudden they got a lot of funding and they're expanding and they get studios and everybody's making good money. And then all of a sudden there are lines they will not cross any longer. And so...
Well, yeah, they're not even having Roger Stone on there anymore. Now, when Bannon was running it, and before the election, Stone was almost as frequent a guest on Breitbart as he was on InfoWars. And now it's as if they never heard of him. And on top of that, somebody else called the other day about Syria, and that was a false flag. And this guy Marlowe says we don't cover conspiracy theories. So this is deteriorating very quickly, and I think people ought to know that. And either comment, maybe I've commented a few times on their Facebook, or stop listening to them altogether. And I think they're going to either get the message, or they're going to go the way of a lot of other shows that went down the drain. Glenn Beck, for instance, is pretty much going down the drain now. That's basically it with them, because they keep on calling themselves alternate media, and they're anything but alternate media as far as I'm concerned anymore. But they were when Bannon was on.
Yes.
They were still serious then. I think they started out like a house on fire.
Yeah.
They were getting the ratings and everything else. He was taking one call after another. He didn't care. You could say pretty much anything. He didn't call you a conspiracy theorist or anything else. So, this is just, I don't think necessarily the corporate that they're listening to the corporations as much as I think.
They've been infiltrated. Bannon did not leave Breitbart in the hands of people who valued freedom of speech. Basically, Breitbart is another gatekeeper, and it unfortunately does happen. And all the rest of us can do is try and remain as independent as we possibly can while we still can. Anyway, listen, Mark, I need to let you go.
One other thing. I just want to make a suggestion to everybody. Okay. Follow this guy Stranahan. He's excellent. He's also got a show on Sputnik News now with some guy named Nick, and he is excellent. Okay, just to let people know that. Okay?
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. We're going to switch over to Mike in Arizona. Thank you for waiting very, very patiently. I'm probably going to have to take you through the commercial break. What is on your mind? Mike in Arizona.
Hey,
there you are.
Yes. Last week, the Department of Justice, in a press release, I'm pretty sure it was last Tuesday, Banamex, it's a corporate offshoot from Citibank. They were fined $97.44 million for money laundering and drugs, money coming from the United States back to Mexico, talking about money junkies. So I guess over the years they had handled like $8.8 billion, and they claimed that they only had 2 people watching these money transfers, and they didn't barely watch anybody at all. So another deal that we're not seeing in the news. Back to BCCI again.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I think people are beginning to realize that banks are not the pinnacle of honesty and ethics and morality, but are in fact the dark heart at the heart, the dark rot at the heart of many criminal enterprises. We have to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're just coming up on last segment of our program, bringing it to an end. A couple more stories about computers, and this one is very interesting. And I think we've already seen it in a recent TV commercial involving animated yearbook photos. New technology produced by computer scientists at Princeton University will have the ability to add words into a voice recording by editing a text transcript of the recording. And what this means is if they get an audio recording of you saying, I love fluffy bunnies, this software will allow them to edit the text of what you say and then re-record using your voice, you saying that. Now, obviously, for botched audio recordings on film and TV, this would be a blessing, but I'm sure you can agree with me, the potential for abuse is definitely there. And as more and more of this software becomes available, it underscores the fact that you cannot trust what you hear and see in the corporate media because it can be manufactured. Now, then a lot of people are over there looking at Snopes as the definitive arbitrator of what is real versus fake news. And Snopes, of course, is saying there's absolutely nothing to the claim that Seth Rich with the DNC leak. But Snopes itself has come under serious concern. Apparently, Snopes, who was openly promoting the Hillary Clinton propaganda last year, and they were caught embezzling their profits on prostitutes, have now been caught accepting money from Monsanto to debunk articles that claim glyphosate is dangerous. So apparently Snopes is out there basically cashing in on their reputation. If you are a large corporation peddling a dangerous product and you are willing to make a donation to Snopes, Snopes will then write articles saying, oh, this claim that glyphosate causes cancer, it's completely false. It's completely false. I guess everybody has a price, and if you're out there wasting money on prostitutes, I guess your price is pretty low. Here in Hawaii, we've had something a little bit unsettling happen these last few days. There's a huge mass of dead sea creatures washing ashore on our beaches. I know the Bureau of Tourism doesn't want that to get on out, but it's especially along Mokulea Beach. And it's literally turning into a pink tide. There are these thousands of crustaceans that have died and they're washing ashore, and nobody knows where they came from or why they're dying. They're concerned, is it chemical runoff from the military bases? Is it Fukushima radiation finally catching up with us? We're not really sure, but obviously something needs to be looked at. And finally, an article that came out of Patriot Rising, America's Fukushima, if we don't act now, we will not be able to avoid the next one. And of course, they're talking about Hanford, which is just sitting there, radiating, leaking, and nobody seems to want to do anything about it. There's the music. Time for me to get out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, share everything you hear here with everybody that you know. Try and get the truth out there, especially about Seth Rich. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.